Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Fight for Our Freedom Radio. And tonight we are so honored to have Jim Lee with us from climateviewer.com. And we are going to be talking about climate control and cloud seeding and all the things that everybody keeps saying this is going on, that's going on. And I came across Jim about a month ago, and I've just been stuck to his website, you guys. You are not going to believe the information we are going to come out with tonight. And the thing that I like about you, Jim, is that you don't speculate. You have facts that you can back up. And I'm so honored to have you join with us tonight. And could you share a little bit with us about how you got involved in everything that you do?
Sure. So I got into this back around 2011, and um, I was just browsing the internet as usual and started watching some YouTube videos on the subject of geoengineering, weather modification, and all of this, and there was pretty weak evidence, you know what I mean? Like there was a whole lot of people saying things, they just weren't saying a lot, and they weren't really giving me anything that I could follow up on. And that kind of griped me. I literally just updated my website 5 minutes before the show. Um, and it was kind of a shock to me that when I started looking into it, I originally was using Google Earth, and I was just set out to map all this out. And yeah, I started mapping out radars and high powered microwaves around the planet, because I had this idea that maybe climate change had more to do with microwaving the sky than CO2. Um, and as that progressed, I was featured on the Google Earth community, which is a forum, and I was in the science section. And then I went and I put cloud seeding projects in my Google Earth file. And then magically, um, everything took a turn for the worse. And they put me in the other sentient side, which was basically the tinfoil hat section of the forum, to which I became highly annoyed. And you cannot win a battle with a forum moderator because they have an ego the size of Jupiter. Um, so that really, ticked me off. And, you know, I'm I'm the type of person that once you challenge me, I accept the challenge, and then I, you know, beat you into submission. So I set out from that point forward to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt the size and scope of, not only cloud seeding projects, but ionospheric heating, cloud ionization technologies, ionospheric heaters like HARP, and really understand them and help other people understand them. So, climateviewer.com wasn't my first website. Originally, I went by the moniker Resonated, REZN8D, and nobody knew who I was, and I liked it that way. And I had resonated.com and resonated.net. And the original version of my map was called the Radiation Database. And eventually, it was wildly popular, but I realized that if I was going to be able to do anything about any of this, I needed to, be a real person and actually go out in public and do things about this. So that's when I decided to tell everybody who I really was. And I came up with, Climate Viewer. And the idea was to see not only, the climate change issue, but the political climate, the privacy and propaganda related to pollution. And those are the three P's that I cover on climateviewer.com. And, basically it goes like this. If you talk about pollution, somebody's going to violate your privacy and they're going to make propaganda about you. And, with that comes geoengineering and cloud seeding and all of those, climate change technologies. I call them the climate changers. So while they
Hmm.
blame you for CO2 for climate change, there's overwhelming evidence that there are climate changers who not only profit from changing the climate, but have some pretty nefarious intentions for it. So that's why, I've packed my website with, nothing but facts. Um, the only place you're actually going to get my opinions is on climateviewer.com and on my YouTube channel, things like that. Um, the the other two websites I have is climateviewer.org, which is my map, and climate viewer or weathermodificationhistory.com. And weathermodificationhistory.com is nothing but facts. It is a timeline that goes from 1800 to present. Um, and you can see, all of the details, in chronological order of the 200-year history of people controlling the climate. So for me, this has come a long way since 2011. Like you're showing the geoengineering page right now. Um, each of the four main pages, they have subsections. So in the geoengineering page, I have a subsection on HARP and another one on chemtrails. And of all the topics I talk about, chemtrails is the most controversial because um, just people are so annoyed by the whole process. Like they don't. I feel like a lot of people don't want to hear the truth about it or
Yep.
don't want to fully understand it because they're so ingrained in their own belief systems. And on the sidebar, if you'll scroll up just a hair, is a quote by Carl Sagan, and it's basically about the bamboozle. And the idea is that generally speaking, once you believe something long enough, um, you're no longer interested in the truth. So he said, one of the saddest lessons of history is this: if you've been bamboozled long enough, you tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. You're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. So, what's happened is this truther community, a lot of them, they have side agendas, namely like AdSense dollars and clickbait, and everybody knows about that stuff. But they use the same tactics that the media uses, that the you know, the people that are doing all of this climate changing do. They use fear, uncertainty, and doubt. FUD.
Yeah.
And it's
I
more,
like that fun.
yeah, FUD it has a long history to it, dating back to the MK Ultra experiments, but it was first officially used like as a term when IBM, the computer company, was creating fear, uncertainty, and doubt about its competitors. Um, but since then, FUD is like the main motivator in, all of politics. It's certainly a motivator on YouTube. If you watch any fear porn, is what I like to call it.
Hmm.
Um, People get addicted to fear. So the stuff that's wildly popular on YouTube is the stuff that has the scariest title and usually has some, horror movie music playing in the background. Um, And, they just talk about the end of the world over and over again. And I think none of that is helpful. So what I've tried to do is be pragmatic about it and give people solutions that are realistic. And that's why I proposed, the Environmental Modification Accountability Act. And what you can see on there is that basically back in 1978, weather warfare was banned, but there's no way to detect whether somebody's doing weather warfare today. And a great example of that is just recently a brigadier general from Iran said that Israel and other countries in the neighborhood are stealing their rain. President Ahmadinejad said the same thing in 2011. This was said this year in 2018. And Ahmadinejad said it a couple years in a row. But regardless, cloud seeding projects all across Europe, plus the United Arab Emirates, they have this UAE rainfall enhancement program. Um, and Israel may be involved, but they're not in the neighborhood. I mean, if they were involved, it would be militarily doing weather warfare. Um, but what we have a case is that on a worldwide scale, weather modification has become such a large thing that it effectively is geoengineering. It is changing the weather on every part of the planet, and people
And
are
it's
paid to do
destroying
this.
our planet, isn't it, Jim?
It is to a large extent. And I did a presentation on this called Technocracy and the Water Wars. And it's about how technocrats are trying to replace the natural water cycle through all these, technological methods. And that's what I really see going on. Is that, basically you have this group of scientists who are damned and determined to control every resource on the planet. And their whole goal is to, control rainfall. And right there on the screen, you have the Dust Bowl. We had climate change in the 1930s, and it was called the Dust Bowl. And what people don't know about it is the way we fixed the Dust Bowl was to plant 220 million trees. And it was called the Great Plains Shelter Belt. Um, and today we're in the same situation. They're cutting down trees as fast as they can. They're even, Europe is literally buying up forests all across the South where I live. I live in South Carolina to grind them up for biofuel. And they're making these wood pellets out of it. This makes no sense at all. Trees suck CO2 out of the sky, it's their food. And trees also make clouds. Most people don't know this. Um, so they're part of the water cycle. They actually create clouds. The ocean creates clouds through evaporation, through phytoplankton. Phytoplankton makes something called dimethyl sulfide. It's a sulfide that creates clouds. Bacteria make clouds, Pseudomonas syringae. They made a genetically modified version of it and released it into the wild called ice minus, and to try to eradicate this bacteria. And this bacteria creates clouds. So in every case, what they're doing is they're actually destroying the natural water cycle that creates the clouds that create the rain. And they're replacing it with ship tracks and contrail induced cirrus clouds, or, plane farts. And, if you ask any chemtrail debunker, they'll say it's just water vapor. Well, it is water vapor, and it's full of metal, and it's making clouds, and those clouds are trapping heat and heating up the planet. So it's a very complicated topic.
Hmm.
And, I spend a lot of my time trying to break it down into categories so that people can understand the big picture. The biggest version of that, breaking it down into, the big picture, is on my NMOD page, the Environmental Modification Accountability Act. You can see a link to an article called 10 Technologies to Own the Weather Today. And these are the 10 technologies that they're using. If you scroll down just a hair, it's on the sidebar. You'll see a gray picture that says the NMOD on it. Just a little further, and you'll see it on there. And there's an article on there about that. And then, of course, that's weather modification. It's right above that. You just scrolled past it. Right there, that one, the Environmental Modification Accountability Act. Big gray picture. Can't miss it. Um, yep, right there.
So who do you think's mainly behind this, Jim? Do you think it's the NWO?
Sure. So the New World Order are technocrats. Technocracy was founded around the 1930s, by, members of the Council of Foreign Relations. And they have grown into, technocracy turned into the New World Federalists, which is one of the largest groups in America. Private groups of people who wanted to destroy America. And now they've morphed into the Club of Rome, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberger Group, um, all of that stuff. So what they all have in common is that they seek to control every resource on the planet through the scientific method, that there would be one world government, that they would disarm every, individual on the planet, and only the world government would have weapons because you don't need them. We'll protect you. Um, and that they would have a single monetary unit for the planet, the carbon unit. That would be money. And that basically they would monitor everything you do, every single resource that's used, and try to, make a zero sum gain where they look at you and they say, "Bad baby, you were, playing your radio real loud this morning, and you washed 3 loads of clothes, and you run your AC all morning. You have exceeded your energy usage for the day, and you are no longer balanced. For this, we will be turning off your air conditioner for 3 hours today until you achieve what's called a balanced load. And then be well." So
Oh, you
that's
know me so well.
that's
Especially
their
the loud
goal.
music.
Yeah, that's their
And
goal,
that's
is to
why they've
control
got
everything.
refrigerators that I could not ever understand why they'd have a refrigerator that you could send your smartphones could send a picture to it. But I found out that they've even got kitchen counters that can report on you how much you're putting on there, how much food you're consuming. And I mean, it's the smart home. If you go into it, it basically is one big spy regime, don't you think?
And that's the goal of technocracy, is that through the use of RFID chips, through the use of, these smart TVs, smart grid, smart city, anything with the word smart in it is
Isn't smart.
is not is dumb. Is is straight from the Technocrats Handbook. Um, Patrick Wood wrote the best book I've ever read on the subject, Technocracy Rising. And if you want to understand everything going on today, from sustainable, anything with the word sustainable in it, sustainable development, these, uh, global grids, these super, cities, that extend past the borders of the current states. It's literally like super regions, mega regions, they call them.
Hmm.
Um, the UN's biodiversity corridors. All of this stuff is, comes from technocracy. And their goal is to basically, you subvert your local laws, ours being the Constitution, to throw it out the window you know, and replace it with a group of engineers who rule the world through the scientific method. And
Mhm.
these engineers will not be voted on. You can bet your, bottom dollar on that. So that's
Well,
the
yeah,
goal.
I mean, here's a scenario with that refrigerator that you can send up, get on your phone, take a picture of what's in your fridge. Okay, here's what they can do with that. Your insurance company can link into that and take a picture and say, "Well, look here, Jim Lee's got 2 6 packs, a bottle of wine, and very little food. He must be an alcoholic. Let's raise his car insurance." You know?
Oh yeah, and it could get way worse than that. There was a situation where Alexa literally emailed somebody without their permission a recording
Yeah,
of something that went on in their house. And
yeah, I
they've
saw
got
that.
these smart TVs that literally are seeing how many faces are looking at the TV. And if you had, say, 20 people in the room, that they could say, this person is actually renting out, like having a little mini movie theater at their house. And you weren't allowed to show this film to that many people and fine you.
Wow.
Digital rights management, is what they call it. And we're getting to a place now where you don't own anything. It's borrowed, it's rented, or it's proprietary. One of the best cases of that was the Sony PlayStation hacker. Um, and basically, the PlayStation uh, 3, I believe it was, it runs on Linux. And all he said was, "Hey man, if this thing has Linux on it, why can't I use it like a computer?" You know what I mean? Put a browser
Uh-huh.
on it, do everything. It's a powerful computer. Why wouldn't I run Linux on it fully? So he put a hack out on the internet that allowed you to root your PlayStation. Well, Sony sued him for that. And his name was GEO, by the way. You can look this stuff up. Oh, little buddy. And as a result, he put a rap out on YouTube saying, "Yo, I'm getting sued by Sony, and here's what I got to say to them." And the rap is amazing. But members of Anonymous, the hacker collective, literally hacked Sony repeatedly, costing them hundreds of billions of dollars. Um, all because they were basically selling a product to you and then saying you can't fully use it, you can't modify it. And that's where we're going with all of these, digital boxes we're buying. Very few things are open source anymore.
It's like
And
we're
and the,
rats trapped in a maze.
well, yeah, I mean they want control of their product to the very end. And one of the worst cases I've heard is even the John Deere tractor. Um, you could go and modify your tractor or fix it yourself or do all that sort of thing. Now they have these chips in them, and you don't own the chips anymore. So the software that's on the chip that runs the tractor is owned by John Deere. So they can't even take it to a local mechanic. They got to take it to a John Deere dealership. And that's the way they're all going,
Total control. Total
Yeah,
control.
total control. And the weather is no different. Um, the weather, the sky is like, any lake you've ever been to. Some people like to swim in the lake. Some people like to read a book near the lake and just look at it. Some people want to jet ski on it, screw it up for the fishermen. um, But the general idea I want you to understand is that the sky is that lake, and there are many different people that want to use it for many different purposes. Um, and even with cloud seeding, there's a great example where some people want to use it to destroy hail, to do what's called hail mitigation. And this is generally insurance companies. So
Do
a
you think the
farm,
insurance companies, like we've been seeing these hail balls that are softball size, are the insurance companies involved in that hail coming down that big?
yes, certainly. So cloud seeding generators are all over the West Coast. If you go up to the top of the menu on climateviewer.com, there's a link that says map, and it's over on the right hand side. Just click that. And that'll take you to climateviewer.org. And when you get there, you can open up the map, and it looks like your internet's going to be a little slow since we're streaming.
Yeah.
But what you can see is that there are cloud seeding generators all across the West Coast. And just close that little box that's open, and the flashing map list button is right over there. And then click on Add Maps. Flashing. I kind of try to make it obvious. And when you
Okay.
get there, click on Pollution and Privacy. And then click on Geoengineering and Weather Modification.
Are they trying to take our water from us, Jim? I mean,
Yes,
I've
they're
been
trying
hearing
full
so much
control.
about. I mean, you can't even have a barrel at your downspout without being fined.
Yeah, and that's what this is all about. So the control of water, the best quote I've heard on it is, fresh water will be to the next century what oil was to the last century. It's been dubbed blue gold in many publications. What you're looking at right there are the actual reported weather modification activities to NOAA, which are required by the government. If you'll scroll down, you'll see the cloud seeding generators. There they are with the little fire thing. So each one of those little fire things, click load map. Right at the top of that, it just says load map. And then click the one next to it on the left. It says Carson Walker Basin, Nevada cloud seeding generators. The next picture over. There you go. That one's loaded. Click that one. And scroll down. This is going to blow your mind. Let's scroll down past the next row. There's one in the middle. Actually, that's super darned. You scrolled real fast. Right there on the left-hand side, it says Santa Barbara, California cloud seeding generators. And then you can click that. And then the one in the bottom corner says Wyoming Weather Modification Pilot Program. Just click it once, and you turn the Santa Barbara off. And then scroll up just a little bit. And then right there, Idaho Power Company cloud seeding generators. The ones that have the fire icons, click all three of those on. And the two below it. And you'll see all of the cloud seeding generators on the West Coast. So what you're going to see is, hold on just a hair, it's the next row. Right there, those two. and the Humboldt River Basin, Nevada cloud seeding generators. And then hit close in the bottom corner. So now you've got all the cloud seeding generators loaded up, and just hit the close button. It's at the bottom of the screen. These are just the weather modification maps. You see it at the very bottom right. The close button. No, don't turn that off. At the bottom of the screen, there's a close button. At the top of the screen, there's an X. You can click either one. All right, and then that little flashing minus button up there, if you click that, it'll get that menu out of your face. And just scroll out of here. This is weather modification in America.
So they use directed energy weapons to do a lot of this also, don't you think?
It is involved, but if you just look at what's on the screen right now, all of those fire icons on the West Coast, click the plus one time. All right, so these are cloud seeding generators. They basically burn silver iodide from October to March of each year. And they make plumes of chemicals that go up over mountains, and they're supposed to put snow on top of the mountains. The result of that is that all of the West Coast, if you click the home icon in the middle of the plus and minus, it'll actually just set it to America. Oh Lord, don't start clicking up there. Just where it says location details, hit the X, and then click the home icon. It's like a little house right there by the plus and minus that you use to zoom in the middle. Click that. All right, so leave it right there. And what do you see? That all of the weather modification activities in America tend to happen on the West Coast. All the floods and the basketball size hail and all of the stuff that we were talking about happens on the East Coast. And that's because the wind moves from west to east. So while they're trying to put snow on top of mountains, they're trying to make it rain in Texas, up in Montana, Colorado, North Dakota, all of that moves eastward. And yes, it does make it rain and make snow on top of mountains on the West Coast, but it doesn't use up all of that silver iodide and all the chemicals that they are producing. And that stuff goes eastward. And slowly but surely, more and more water sticks to it, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So eventually, we end up with these torrential floods. We end up with these basketball size hail, blizzard conditions, all because all winter long they're trying to coat the Rocky Mountains, the entire West Coast with snow so that in the springtime it'll melt and they'll have enough water to make it through the year. Now, everybody hears about the California drought, and you can see just by this map that they have millions of dollars invested in trying to, keep the water there, and then, which would effectively, if possible, deny water to the East Coast. Um, but that's not what's happening. Ends up happening is, yes, they do produce a little bit of extra rain on top of the mountains, which turns into snow, and a little bit more rain for the breadbasket of America. But eventually, all of these chemicals that they're releasing create monumental storms on the East Coast, which there are no operational weather modification projects on the East Coast. We just end up getting the S end of the stick, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So just by mapping this out and being able to visualize it, you start to see that this is the scale of this is the scale of what they're talking about with geoengineering. And this is in every country. This is just that in America, we're a pretty open society, and I've been able to find more information on the projects in America than I have been able to overseas. First, I don't speak Russian or Chinese, so it's pretty tough for me to translate that stuff. But mapping it out and seeing where these ground-based cloud seeding generators are, um, it's a real mind blower. If you see where those question marks are, um, those question marks actually show the actual maps where I got the sources from. Yeah, like that one right there. Okay, see, it's going to be tough for you to click it. Click the one that's next to it to the left. That one. Now scroll down on this little pop-up and you can actually see what a ground-based cloud seeding generator looks like. That's what they look like. So you got the old redneck version over on the right, where a guy literally comes outside and lights it with a match, and it's just got a propane tank, and the box contains silver iodide. It's also loaded with acetone. And on the the left hand side is the fancy, expensive version, which is controlled by a cell phone. It's got, a solar panel, a huge propane tank, like the ones you'd see near a mobile home or something, ones the size of a small car. There's two of them down there. And it's got the burner box at the top. So this is cloud seeding from the ground, not from planes. So that's what I'm talking about when I say ground-based cloud seeding generator. They
Mhm.
literally burn these chemicals. Every one of those fire icons is a separate one of those towers, or the redneck version on the right. Um, and they operate from October to March of every single year. So right now, they're doing everything they can to get as much snow on the mountains as possible. And this is going to affect, all of the weather on the East Coast. And it does every single year. I mean, we've seen some pretty impressive photos of, like lighthouse towers that have got ice coming off of them 7 feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it's because of all of the weather modification activity on the West Coast. So that's the purpose of this map. You're only looking at cloud seeding generators right now. The yellow icons are super darns. They're actually microwaves, kind of like HARP. Um, it stands for Super Dual Auroral Radar Network. There's actually a map of every ionospheric heater on the planet in there as well. And I pride myself on being able to find photos of these things. So if it says no photo available, there is no photo available of that on the internet.
Mhm.
Um, but each one of these icons is like a mini web page. And I've spent 4 years creating these maps that you see on here, and I programmed the entire map, you know, program myself. So this was no easy feat. Um, but yeah, that's what I do with climateviewer.org. You're actually looking at the mobile map, There's a button that says switch to 3D globe. There's a 3D version of it as well. Um, you're going to need a faster PC, obviously, than what I'm looking at right now to do this live. So I don't suggest you try the 3D version live. I have a 6 core Core i7 with 16 gig of RAM and SSD hard drive and 100 megabit internet. So I use the 3D version live when I'm on the internet.
Hmm.
But I made this mobile version, which is lighter. It's easier for people to use. Check out the chemtrails in the photo there. It wallops. You gotta love that, right? Um,
And what do you think that all these chemicals are doing to the children?
well, I mean, what goes up must come down. And putting metal particulates into the sky has been directly linked to Alzheimer's. Um, there are many papers that talk about the fact a link between breathing metal nanoparticles through the nasal passages specifically, because what ends up happening is that it passes through the blood-brain barrier. So whether you're talking about plane farts, chemtrails, whether you're talking about silver iodide from cloud seeding projects, or any of the other geoengineering proposals out there to spray aluminum, titanium, barium, sounding rockets which spray trimethyl aluminum, barium, titanium, strontium, sulfur hexafluoride. They're spraying, massive amounts of metal in the sky and have been for many, many years, at least since the 1960s with the sounding rockets and even longer with the cloud seeding. Cloud seeding was invented in 1946, but they'd been trying long before that to modify the weather with cannons and rockets and balloons and just all kinds of stuff. So this is just a view of like the last 10 years worth of weather modification projects and cloud seeding generators that are operational today. So this is getting to be pretty darn creepy, the size and
Yeah.
scale of what, I've just been able to find on my own. And that doesn't account for all the stuff that I haven't found yet. So if you look at the size of it, you have to realize that this is drastically affecting our weather because there's so many people involved. This doesn't even account for the electromagnetic portion of things. Um, lasers can be used to steer lightning bolts as well as make it rain. Ionospheric heaters can create high pressure zones like the ridiculously resilient ridge and things like that that can possibly steer the jet stream, that create ELF waves or extremely low frequency waves that mess with your brain. Um, the list goes on and on. So, I vehemently oppose all of this because, we're intervening in the sky in such a way that, you know, they have the ability to deny water to certain locations. This was documented in the CIA was screwing with Cuba's weather. It was called Project Nile Blue, and they did a rain embargo on Cuba to keep rain from falling on the island to ruin Castro's sugar crops. This happened in 1969 and 70. In Vietnam, during Operation Popeye, we did the opposite. We were using silver iodide and lead iodide to make it rain on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. As a result of Operation Popeye, that's why there was a weather warfare ban written in 1978, because basically Jack Anderson wrote a piece about it in the Pentagon Papers, then wrote an article in some newspapers, and then Senator Claiborne Pell had some secret hearings, two of which are available on climateviewer.com and weathermodificationhistory.com. The third is still classified to this day. And that says a lot because it happened in 1967 through 73 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
So Henry Kissinger and the CIA were behind Operation Popeye, and they used the U.S. Air Force and Navy to do it. They didn't even tell the Secretary of Defense they were doing it. So when we talk about secret government programs to screw with the environment, you got to understand that Henry Kissinger is a technocrat. He is a card holding member of the Club of Rome, Bilderberger Group, Trilateral Commission. He is a technocrat. Um, and he convinced the CIA to do the weather warfare over Vietnam and not tell the top brass in the military they were doing it. So only 19 to like 25 people even knew this was going on for 5 years. That is amazing. And their slogan was "Make mud, not war."
Jesus.
um, yeah. So at the end of the day, all the videos you saw of Vietnam and all the torrential rainfall during the monsoon, they wanted to make the monsoon worse, so that the Viet Cong couldn't transport their weapons and stuff up and down the coast. Um, the the icons you're clicking on right now are actual geoengineering projects. The EP's Eastern Emitted Aerosol um, Cloud Experiment was a marine cloud brightening project. So that's a geoengineering project. You clicked on the geoengineering tests map layer while you were in there. But basically, like, I try to map all this stuff out on climateviewer.org, and then, all of it's in chronological order on weathermodificationhistory.com. And I do all of this because there really aren't a lot of credible facts out there other than on my three websites. And as a result, I get people from Harvard, MIT, the United Nations Environmental Program. I actually taught a class on weather modification at Harvard University using my research. Geoengineer David Keith has cited my website. He's even endorsed my solution, the Environmental Modification Accountability Act. Um, you know, I have a list of citations that, would be the envy of anybody who talks about this topic. And I don't do this for the citations. I do this to spread the truth. So, I mean, literally, an institute in Pakistan just recently wrote a paper towards weather modification in 2025 and cited weathermodificationhistory.com as the source of a lot of the material they were using, saying, look, this is a serious freaking problem. And I think that, you know, my stuff is more geared towards scholars. I desperately try to make it geared towards the public, but it's a very complicated topic, and people, generally speaking, aren't interested in facts. They're interested in feelings. Um, that's just where America is right now. People feel more than they think logically. And I try to be logical about my research so that I can inform people and give them the tools to make a difference. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that many people are interested in those facts. They're more interested in scare the hell out of me. And I often say, I could go whip up 100 conspiracies using the material I have and be the most famous guy on YouTube tomorrow. But then I would damage my credibility with people who are influential in changing the world. So I'd rather keep my credibility because,
Absolutely.
you know, that's where I'm going to be able to make a change in the world.
Right, because the goal is to try to do something about it, not just talk about it.
Yeah, and a lot of people are just talking about it. And
So,
the
what can we do, Jim? What can just the average guy do to try to help you? I mean, first of all, we love you. We want to thank you for all the work you have done. We always support our guests here, and I encourage everybody that's listening to go to Jim's pages and to donate to him, give him support so he can continue, and click on PayPal, give him a donation, and help him to get out there and save our lives because that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing, Jim.
I
You're saving our
appreciate that. And
lives.
there, and at the top of the page is a donate link right there. Like I said, you don't see any advertising on this page at all. Um, I do this all via, thank you money. I have a Patreon account if you want to give monthly, or you can give a one-time donation with PayPal or GoFundMe, your choice. But yeah, this isn't about, a money-making endeavor. This is about, me. I was a Boy Scout. I went into the Air Force. It didn't work out. um, and I had dreams of being like my father. My father was a military man. He was an officer. He went in, enlisted, and became an officer. And I was born on a nuclear missile base. The irony of that is now I talk about nuclear more than he does.
It
Um,
shows how it be fate.
yeah, it really is. And my job was going to be spy satellite optics in the military. And look at me now. I've got a map that you can see every earthquake, fire, lightning bolt strike, NEXRAD radar live. You can see every nuclear reactor on the planet, weather modification activities, ionospheric heaters, every missile defense radar on the planet over 1 million watts. Um, you name it, all on one map. So I ended up doing that job. I just do it for the public. Um, and I do my videos on YouTube. I'm getting ready to do one right now because um, there's, Hands Off Mother Earth just put out a manifesto, which is 110 civil society organizations and popular movements demand an immediate stop to climate geoengineering. And, I've worked with the ETC group. They're the top anti geoengineering group in the world. Despite what you've heard about who's anti geoengineering, those people don't really do a damn thing about anything. Um, but ETC Group, it's at the top of the page. I just posted the article if you want to look at it. It's the very first article at the top of the page. And I'm getting ready to do a video about it after we get off the phone, just right underneath that section where the four, where those pictures are, right where it says geoengineering news. It's the first article right there, Hands Off Mother Earth Manifesto. Um, Basically, this group has written up a letter to world leaders saying, look, enough's enough. We need to put a stop to the things like David Keith and all of these people are talking about doing. Putting a sunscreen in the sky to block out sunlight, putting glass balls on the ice on the North Pole to reflect sunlight, creating noctilucent clouds over the poles, which are normally made of meteorite dust. They want to make them out of diamond dust. Um, Putting
Crazy.
micro bubbles on the surface of the ocean or plastic beads on the surface of the ocean to make it more reflective, to dump iron in the ocean, which is called ocean iron fertilization to create algae blooms. to sequester CO2. All of these ideas are so crazy. And, they basically say, because global warming, because science. And all of these ideas would be a test on such a large scale that, nobody knows what's going to happen. And anybody who has made an educated guess about what will happen is things are going to die at the
Us
very
including.
least, us included. And that's what geoengineering governance is about. So, the Solar Radiation Management Governance Initiative, SRMGI, really kicked all this off from the Royal Society. And their whole idea was to make laws to govern geoengineering. The problem with that is that what they're really trying to govern is who gets control of Earth's thermometer and how to pay the dead people. Because geoengineering solar radiation management is blocking out the sun. And what it's doing is mimicking volcanoes. Volcanoes do this naturally. They put sulfur up in the stratosphere, it cools down the planet. The difference is they want to put tons and tons and tons of either sulfur, aluminum, strontium, titanium, diamond dust, calcium. These are some of the chemicals that they've thought about spraying, um, and coat the entire world in this to cool down the planet.
Which will
And
cause us an ice age, don't you think?
well, if you've ever seen the movie Snowpiercer, that's the whole premise of the movie is that geoengineering went wrong and coated and made an ice age, and the only people that are still alive are on a train. And the rich people at the front of the train eat the people that are poor at the back of the train.
Oh, I
Uh,
haven't seen that movie.
watch that movie. It's an eye opener. Snowpiercer.
Oh, Lord.
It's bad. But yeah, that's what the truth of the matter is that geoengineering will do exactly what volcanoes do, and that is change rainfall patterns worldwide. And when Mount Pinatubo, which was their aha moment, the one most cited as why we should do geoengineering was the eruption of Mount Pinatubo. It nearly dried up the Amazon rainforest rivers. That rain didn't fall in the southern hemisphere as often as it did before and during that whole time. So if you were to do this on a long term, process, and they're talking about doing this for 20 to 100 years, that we would end up with a dry southern hemisphere and an increasingly wet northern hemisphere. So if you think the rainstorms are bad now in America, just wait till they legalize geoengineering.
Hmm.
Um, and the people in the southern hemisphere that are going to suffer the massive droughts, what do you think is going to happen? They're not just going to die, they're going to migrate, which is why they
Hmm.
want no borders, which is why they're trying to dissolve borders now, which is, Syria was a test experiment for what the future holds for geoengineering. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, or the new Mad Max movie where they literally were sucking water out of people. Um, that is our future if we cannot change this. And the simplest way to change this is support, my legislation, the Environmental Modification Accountability Act. It'll go a long way to fixing the problem. But the most important thing we can do is replant our forests and protect the forests that we have. That is the number one way we can avoid global warming, geoengineering, all of this craziness. They talk about creating artificial trees. Why not just plant real trees?
That's what I do. I love trees. I've been here
I'm
30 years and I plant trees everywhere on my property.
Well, we want to make tree bombs, seed bombs. They're little seed grenades. You can throw them out your window, and they'll biodegrade into the ground and plant a tree. So, I mean, there's hundreds of ways that we could fix this problem, but you got to remember the Dust Bowl was fixed by changing agriculture and how they would strip the ground bare, and and they started leaving the leaves and the stalks on the ground to prevent erosion, and they planted 220 million trees. It was called the Great Plains Shelter Belt. Those trees are now being cut down. And I just read an article dated this month. Nothing's going to stop the coming droughts and dust storms from returning. And the reason why is because history is repeating itself, and those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. We planted 220 million trees. We've lost way more than that since. So climate change was fixed before by planting trees and changing the way we did agriculture. That's what we have to do today. Um, because the trees clean the sky, they clean up the CO2, it's their food, and they make oxygen for us. The phytoplankton in the ocean produce more oxygen for us to breathe than anything else on the planet, and we're killing the hell out of it. We're killing it through ship tracks, these global ships, globalization, buying stuff from, overseas, and then them shipping it across the Pacific in these massive, ships. They said that these 16 boats produce more CO2 than all of the cars on the planet. So if you believe that CO2 is a problem, sink those 16 ships and we'll call it a day.
Good idea.
Yeah, but so there's no rationale, and the people that talk about global warming, they don't have a brain, and they believe the bamboozle that we can fix a problem with the same technology that created the problem. And I go the opposite direction. I say, get the hell out of the way of, nature's ability to be smarter than us, and simply plant trees and change your habits. And if we can't convince people to do that, geoengineering is an inevitability. And I don't want my two daughters to grow up in that world. That's why I fight.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what, I look at it this way. I've lived my life, but I want my grandchildren to have a world to be here. And we have to get out here and do something. Otherwise, we're all toast. And it isn't looking real good, is it?
Well, people are so focused on, sports or being entertained, or, being part of group X or Y and dehumanizing the other group, whether it be, you know, gay versus straight, Christian versus Muslim, Republican versus Democrat.
Yeah.
We really got to realize that this whole, Hegelian dialect, left right paradigm, BS, Clemson versus Carolina. I mean, people take it's almost as bad in the football world as it is in the political world. I mean, you got people who literally get in a fist fight going, well, our team, you're not part of the team. You never played football for Clemson or Carolina. So why are you so gassed up? You're an idiot.
And I think a lot of the spraying too is actually dumbing people down and making them ignorant.
There may be some truth to that because they've been spraying lithium from sounding rockets for 60 years. um,
Well, and I had someone email me about a year ago and they said, "Bad baby, what is lithium?" And I said, "It's a psych drug to, make you docile." And they said, "Well, look at this." And they sent me a picture and they put this fountain up in California and it looked beautiful. It was a big brick square, and it had these balls hanging out that were bubbling water out of them. And right above the balls was a plaque that said, "Welcome to the new lithium water fountain." And these people were walking up, putting their babies up there and drinking out of it, taking big drinks. And I thought, do you people even see that sign says lithium? I mean,
People don't. I mean, signs everywhere, signs blocking up the scenery, breaking my mind. There are so many signs out there that people have been trained to ignore them. I'm from Generation X. Like, we don't trust anybody or anything. You cannot advertise to my generation. Like, well, we see an advertisement and we immediately go, screw you. I'm gonna do what I want. I will buy what I want. You cannot convince me otherwise. Um, but yeah, people tend to just ignore the signs, and you so much so that everybody's looking down at a cell phone. They're not looking up at the sky
exactly.
and seeing that it's basically starts out in the morning nice and sunny, and by the afternoon it's completely covered in hazy milky white clouds, and they don't want to understand. They probably don't even notice it's going on. So it's really hard to break through all of the, entertainment, to get people to even give a crap. And Dr. Seuss said it best. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. Um,
Exactly.
so,
I
and
wish
I
they'd
used,
take the cell phones away and put the pay phones back in.
well,
Then you'd have to pull your car over to make a phone call, wouldn't you?
the cell phones also, in addition to probably giving you cancer, they emit blue light. And blue light has an effect on the brain. You should probably look into it. You can go to the pollution section of Climate Viewer and go to the EMF section. It's climateviewer.com/EMF. But blue light actually will keep you up at night. It'll make it to where you don't want to sleep. It can cause severe agitation. Um, and all of these devices, they emit blue light. There are actually, people that get these blue headlights.
Mm-hmm.
There are cities that have replaced all of their, street lamps with these new LEDs that are blue in light. And then had people do class action lawsuits suing the city to remove them because people were getting headaches. So, you know, there are so many things that are interrupting, our natural ability to function. Um, the ionospheric heaters, they mess with something called the Schumann resonance, which is the heartbeat of our planet. It is a
Yes.
electromagnetic frequency in our ionosphere. It's 7.83 hertz, and they can actually completely destroy that by pumping electricity into the ionosphere, to where they add 20 decibels worth of noise to it to where it is inaudible. In fact, the Schumann resonance is inaudible in most cities because of electro smog, or the EMF frequencies coming from AM, FM radio, digital television, all the cell phone towers, um, every trucker that drives by you. I mean, I've had truckers drive by and literally hear their voices coming out of my speakers. There's so much electricity coming out of their antenna, um, to where we're no longer connected with nature.
Mm-mm.
And the best thing you can do is ground yourself, put your bare feet on dirt. Hopefully, you're not on dirt next to a cell phone tower. But that's why people feel so good when they go to the beach and they have that salt water and that wet ground, and or when they go deep into the woods, they like, man, I just feel better when I'm out here. That more and more people are becoming electromagnetically sensitive, and a lot of this has to do with the inhalation of metals. We generally speaking wouldn't be as sensitive to, these electromagnetic frequencies if we weren't, ingesting so much metal nanoparticles, and even mold. Mold exposure causes EMF sensitivity. So There's a lot going on, and people always want some simple answer like, well, it's the chemtrails. Um, and I look at them and I just shake my head because you can't blame. There's never one cause of any problem. When people break up, and they end their marriage, it was never one thing. I mean, unless you went and screwed around on your wife, or vice versa. That could be a one thing that broke the camel's back, but generally speaking, there were problems before that. So, you
Right.
know, in every situation, there are usually multiple causes for a problem. So I try to keep it real and say, look, all of these things are occurring simultaneously. And if we don't start to deal with them individually, it's just going to continue to get worse and worse. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. So I try to educate people on the different topics and get them to care enough to try to make a difference, and take a little bit of your time to learn this stuff so that you can educate your kids, and maybe they'll have enough energy to see the job through, because we're
Exactly.
not going to do this in our lifetime. I don't expect to completely put a stop to this in my lifetime, but I'm at least going to do everything within my power to raise awareness with the facts, so that the next generation can pick up that baton and change the world. Because right now, we've barely cracked the surface of awareness, let alone got to the point where we're going to be able to convince, the swamp to go and do something about it. Politicians, you got to lobby them with money. And none of us, little people have the kind of money it takes to get them to actually write a law. So without, you know, another Dr. Seuss quote, until the last Who in Whoville raised his voice, they were not heard. And
Well, I
that's
hope it doesn't get to the
more than
point
years of
where
Who.
we're all in big trouble here, but I think we're already all in big trouble.
We are. And right now, the technocrats are doing everything they can to legalize geoengineering so that they can deploy it on a worldwide scale. And until then, they are experimenting with ship tracks and contrail cirrus. And contrail cirrus is what people call chemtrails. It is a cirrus cloud. So whether you want to call it a contrail or a chemtrail, they are experimenting on those clouds, those artificial clouds coming out of planes to cool the planet. They're doing the same thing with ships. They are called ship tracks. They're experimenting on them using what's called bunker fuel, which is dirty fuel, to create marine stratocumulus clouds. This is geoengineering light. You don't want to see geoengineering full. The full plan,
Yeah.
legalized, um, a group of IPCC smartasses deciding how to adjust the temperature of the planet. We have to stop that at any measure, because man should not have that kind of power. We can't trust our governments to be honest about voting registration,
Yeah.
border control, any of these little common sense things. How could we ever trust man with controlling the entire world's water and temperature?
Well,
So
they
that's
take our
why.
water away, then that takes our crops away, that takes food away, then that takes us away.
And there are guys like Ted Turner and Bill Gates and many other very illuminated technocrats who have clearly stated they want to reduce the population of the planet. And this is a great way to do it.
I think
So
they're
I'm
doing
not,
it with hurricanes too.
well,
You know,
hurricanes certainly can be modified and steered. I don't know that they can be created from scratch, but I'm kind of looking at Hurricane Michael and going, that thing literally started off the coast of South America out of nowhere.
Mhm.
And I watched it form and it just blew my mind. So I'm doing a research little project on that right now. And I want to look at all the historical tracks of hurricanes because I have never seen one that, didn't start off the coast of Africa and make its way here. Um, and I'm sure there probably has been, but I want to look for myself. But what I saw was a hurricane that literally came out of nowhere and started off the coast of South America, and in less than 5 days was hitting, America full force. Um, and it's pretty interesting that it hit Tyndall Air Force Base, but we won't get into that. That's a conspiracy story for another day.
Yeah. And
But yeah,
what I
weather
found
war.
interesting is that it directed right back where the other one was to flood these areas again, like a 1-2 punch.
Well, I was one of the recipients of the 1,000-year flood fire hose water atmospheric river, Hurricane Joaquin. I lived through Hurricane Hugo. It hit my hometown. It was the second most devastating hurricane ever to hit America. I've lived through many hurricanes, and it's always scary, and it's even scarier to know that man is literally involved in that. The Department of Homeland Security had a hurricane modification workshop in 2008 to talk about how to steer hurricanes. And that's available on climateviewer.com as well. Just scroll to the bottom of the page, click on hurricane modification, and you'll find the article. Department of Homeland Security enters the weather modification business, and you can read their report. It's pretty darn scary. But if the Department of Homeland Security is involved in hurricane modification, then anything is possible. And Bill Gates, Ken Caldera, and a whole bunch of other guys um, are involved in that. It's in alphabetical order. It's right there. Hurricane modification, middle of the row. One more down. There you go. That row. Up one right there. But yeah, I've got a lot of information on hurricane modification, and it's a real thing, and it can be used as an economic warfare tool as well. Um, but we shall see. Um, at the end of the day, there are a lot of people involved in, modifying the sky, and I try to break it all down, give the facts. Um, Climate Global Trading LLC creates and steers hurricanes using ionospheric heaters. Our next red radar beam steering Hurricane Florence. That's the one that just came over my house.
Mhm.
And then Hurricane Michael came over my house and literally took out my internet for 3 days. Thank you, Michael. Um, the full history of hurricane modification 1947 to present, and that's Project Cirrus. That was the first military hurricane modification attempt. And if you scroll on down, you'll see the Department of Homeland Security one.
Okay. Well, Jim, I
There it is
appreciate
right
you
there at the
coming on
bottom.
tonight. This information is just, I mean, there's so much you have here. We can't cover it all in one show.
There's several thousand hours worth of research just on climateviewer.com, and that is one of three websites. There's probably 10,000 hours worth of research on Climate Viewer 3D, which is at climateviewer.org. And you didn't even look at weathermodificationhistory.com. See the poster on the side there, man-made versus nature?
Hmm.
Click that real quick. . 'Cause. 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 'C And this is my final website. I hope that everybody will check it out as well. It's weathermodificationhistory.com. It is the most comprehensive weather modification and geoengineering timeline on the planet, and the most referenced weather modification research website on the internet. Scientific journals, government institutions, uh, they're literally quoting this website because it's that accurate. And that's why I built it.
Well,
So,
I just say, for us that don't know what to do, I think the main thing we should do is support Jim and share his information with everybody and everybody get involved and start planting trees. And let's just say we aren't going to take it. We aren't. We don't have to. We have the right to stand up and speak out. If we're just going to be little minions here, it's going to continue.
that's that 10 technologies article I was telling you about. And then people, patents, programs, and laws. Can't get more factual than that. Each one of those links to an article over on climateviewer.com, a list of patents, a list of the people involved, the programs they run, and the actual laws that govern all of this. I interviewed Dr. Jim Fleming, the world's top historian on weather modification. You could see that interview video right there. And then the timeline starts a little lower down the page. And up near the top, if you click on newspapers, you can see over 700 newspapers from 1800 to present. My friend Dominic Marama actually converted them all to single images so you can read the entire newspaper article. Um, just an insane amount of work has gone into all of this.
And you've actually had the experts come to you because of them researching your work that you've done out there.
Nobody's done it like I've done. I mean, and the stuff that Dominic has done right here that you've got up on the screen is amazing too. That's why I paired up with him to make weathermodificationhistory.com. Um, there's 776 newspaper articles up there right now. I mean, just that alone, you can't find that anywhere else. And you're streaming live, and these are a lot of images, so I don't want to blow up your screen by you know overloading you with graphics. But I'm a graphics artist. I have been since I was a kid, so I take a lot of pride in trying to make the websites look really good. And we've done our research. We continue to do new research all the time, and this will only continue to grow. And eventually, I hope that it resonates. And if this message and my information resonates with you, I hope that you will share it. I have recently quit Facebook and Twitter so that I can focus all the little time I have on, working on new projects that, I've had in my to-do list forever, and spending more time with my family.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, all this is done for free. There are no advertisements. You can support me at patreon.com/climateviewer, paypal.me/climateviewer, or gofundme.com/climateviewer. And I would greatly appreciate it. But I'd more appreciate you sharing this information. And even more than that, I'd appreciate you learning this information, because
Yes.
if you know this information like I do, and it's going to be pretty tough because I've got a photographic memory, I remember everything I read. Um, but you can at least get the big picture, and you can share this with others who are going to, who have the time and interest to really dig into it and want to know the truth, not to be scared, um, that they want the facts. And that's what I've designed these three websites for.
Well, I have to say, Jim, you've done an excellent job. And, you know, God bless you for everything you do. And I'm behind you 100%. If there's anything I could ever do, I would love to have you come back and let us, you know, talk some more about this and get people more aware, getting people more involved. And let's wake America up because we are drones. We're drones.
Well, that's the goal, and I hope to, I hope to do my part. And I think that, I know that I've already changed the world. I've seen it in many different ways. I've seen it in scientific journals and people starting to really, get the big picture. But we've got a long way to go. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I do appreciate you having me on. It's almost midnight, and I'm gonna
Yeah,
wrap it up here.
we kept you longer than you said you were going to talk. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I really do. My audience does too. And I will let you go, and we will have you back soon so we can get some more information out here and get you some more support.
I appreciate that, and I will link this up. This talk will be available on climateviewer.com/interviews. All the interviews I do are available there, so I will link to this recording um, so that others, can come see this. I hope to send a whole bunch of people your way, and I
Thank you,
appreciate
Jim.
you having me.
Well, you keep up the good work, and I'm behind you 100%.
Well, thank you very much.
And
You have a
you have a
wonderful
great
night, and I
night.
appreciate you having me on.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
All right, folks, that was Jim Lee. What a